Welcome aboard, Philinati. So it's a good Friday, July 10th right now, and we're planning to go take the boat out this Sunday, but there's a little bit of maintenance out here, so I've been sweating a little bit. So let me show you how to do proper heat exchanger maintenance. Every 5 to 6 years you really should take your heat exchanger off and then do a deep clean of it, and the Barnicle Buster and whatnot. But what I'm doing right now is the symptoms are low water flow outside the back of the engine for the port engine. Checked everything else out, and before I actually take the entire heat exchanger off and do an acid bath with it, I just filled it up with Barnicle Buster, and I'll show you that in a second. And then I'm gonna let it sit for an hour, run the engines, get all that stuff out, do it over and over again for the next 3 to 4 hours. So we'll see exactly how that works. So let's go take a look. So as you can see here, this is the heat exchanger, and the two hoses coming out of it are this one, and you follow that to right here, and this one, and you follow that right there. So what I did is I just filled this up with Barnicle Buster, and this sits above the heat exchanger. Now I could have took the time and actually attached another hose right here, put a bucket down there with a bilge pump, and then recirculate the Barnicle Buster throughout the heat exchanger. But before I go do all that, it's just going to the hardware store, getting some more parts. I'm just gonna do it with the Barnicle Buster right here and just let it sit for an hour, recycle it, sit for an hour, recycle it. So it's gonna be a few hours of doing this, but that should be good. And once I'm done with that, then I'll crank up the engine and show you if water flow, if there's actual crud stuck in my heat exchanger from the raw water system. So doing that, and it's just a maintenance item that you have to do, everybody has to do. So talk with you soon. Alright, so I'm sitting here watching some TV, waiting for a couple hours. It's almost been 2 hours. I got 20 more minutes. And then while I was down there, I did a few other maintenance items. Like, for instance, this was an exhaust clamp. Well, was, because you can see here it's destroyed. So I went ahead and got another clamp. I have a ton of different clamps. So, and that was right to the water outlet going outside the boat. I mean, the hose was still attached, so I'm not too worried. I have 2 clamps on each section of the exhaust elbows and whatnot. So yep, this happens. So I'm just gonna give it 2 hours today and then flush it out and start the engines, and stay tuned. I'm gonna come back with starting the engines, and we'll see the water flow out of the side. I know for a fact it's working, because the water level, well, the Barnicle Buster level, I added it in the hose, and then I could see where it was in the hose. After an hour, I couldn't see the Barnicle Buster anymore, so I poured more in, and then the level came up, and then over the past 45 minutes, it's kind of hovered there. So I'm thinking there's a couple blockages through the pipes, and all the heat exchanger is with the raw water is a bunch of little pipes that go through the center of the heat exchanger where the water goes. So probably a couple barnacles or marine growth or whatever. So just drinking a nice Coca-Cola, Coke Zero. Can't gain any weight with drinking some Coke Zero. So stay with me for a few minutes, and we'll see if I can't get some good water flow coming out of that port engine. Stay tuned. Okay, so I started the port engine. So let me show you actually the water coming out. So it looks like it's good. I'm going to start starboard engine for a few minutes as well. And let's go see if water flow's coming out of there as well. Yep, it's good. So it's very important to every so often use Barnicle Buster in your heat exchangers. Yep. So I'm letting my gauges here come up to temp and pressure. As you can see here, coolant temperature slowly starting to rise. Oil pressure is good on the port engine. Oil pressure is good, and I just started this engine, so this is cold. So in the next few minutes, it'll just slowly start creeping back up to the middle. But I'm going to keep an eye on that. But yeah, so I'm going to hang out here at the Conch Marina for a few minutes, make sure everything's running good, and I'll get back with you. Talk to you soon. Alright, so made it back to the house, and I want to give you some pro tips on your heat exchanger. So if you're in a lake up north somewhere, you might not even have a heat exchanger, because it's only really for saltwater applications. You don't want salt water in your engine block, cast iron or aluminum or whatever it is that it's going through, and oil coolers, and it would just corrode everything. So in saltwater applications where I'm at, your engines have to have a heat exchanger. So you have antifreeze, and in addition, the antifreeze goes through the heat exchanger, and the raw water, seawater, goes through the pipes of the heat exchanger, and it cools the antifreeze, and then it goes out the exhaust. I did order gaskets, the seals. Each heat exchanger has 2 seals on each side. Now I didn't have those, so I didn't take apart the heat exchanger. Today was try to increase the flow of the seawater through the system and see if soaking it with the Barnicle Buster actually would help, and it actually did. So that's you know, so all in all, we get to go out this weekend, and we plan to go out to Fort Matanzas, which is about, by boat ride, about a 45-minute slow cruise. They only go about 10 miles per hour basically in the boat. So that's my pearls of wisdom every 5 years, or just keep an eye on your equipment. Like, my engine wasn't overheating at all. This is a preventative maintenance item. You don't want your heat exchanger to go bad on you. Now, I inspected it, and the things that could go wrong with a heat exchanger is the actual pipes in it could corrode, well, you know, break apart, and then you have a mix of coolant and raw water, seawater, and then you might get it coming out of your coolant reservoir and pouring into the bilge area, that, you know, because the pressure of the impeller of the engine is pushing the coolant that way. Or you might have coolant coming out of the exhaust as well, and your coolant's leaking. Like, I don't have any coolant leaking. I've checked all my hoses. A couple of months ago I had a small coolant leak. That's just because a clamp on a hose wasn't tight enough, so I added another clamp. So I have dual clamps on that hose, and I might just replace the hose as well pretty soon. So, but yeah, stay tuned. This Sunday we're going to go out to Fort Matanzas, have a great time. So as always, like and subscribe, and we'll be talking with you. Ciao.